Hello, this is Father Aaron Westman with the Glen Mary Home Missioners, and this is your Missioner Moment. My brothers and sisters, we're living in the midst of an election cycle, and as they historically have done, election cycles bring about a lot of anxiety and uncertainty. I think we all feel this in different ways. And perhaps with this election cycle, it's probably more pronounced in what we're feeling inside. I mean, it's very rare that you have an election cycle taking place in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of an economic recession. In some ways, it's somehow global, in the midst of a civil unrest, and at least for the United States, in a case where it seems like some folks are even calling into question the very structures of our democracy. And all of this can create, understandably, a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in our lives. So how should we approach this from the perspective of faith? Now, certainly we as Christians can't exit the world in which we live. We are part of this world. We've got to be involved in this world. We've got to seek to build up the kingdom of God within this world. But how can faith give us a perspective on what we feel inside? In the gospel this weekend, we are given this great promise from Jesus. And Jesus says to Peter, you are a rock, and on this rock I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Wow, I mean, what an amazing promise that the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. Now, I understand that this requires faith for us to believe. But I think if we look throughout history, we can see that there is empirical evidence that what Jesus says to the church is true. Think back to the Roman Empire. I mean, nobody thought that the Roman Empire would ever fall. The Roman Empire fell, and the church remained. Think about the tumultuous times in the place which we call Europe today, which existed in the 6th, 7th, and 8th centuries with barbarian hordes invading, and there were Islamic advances coming up. There was all kinds of clashes that were taking place, all the turmoil that was happening, and the church remained. Or think of the great persecution that happened in Japan. Christians were persecuted to such an extent that for many of them, they had to hide out and they didn't have access to a priest or the sacraments for many, many years. And the church remained. Or think of the bloodshed of the French Revolution, the tumult of that time. Saints' statues being crushed, thrown into the River Seine, the martyrs that existed. And the church remained. My brothers and sisters, we have been given a profound promise by Jesus, and we can see that this promise has been kept by him. And as we see the uncertainty that exists around us, what this means for us is that we do not need to approach the world with fear or undue anxiety, for we have been given this promise that the church is built on a rock. The gates of hell will not prevail against it.